I've been to school and I was homeschooled, and there is one choice that I much prefer over the other, and that is homeschool, because there are so many things you can do when you homeschool compared to when you go to school. And we're going to talk about a lot of those differences in this video here. By the end of this video, if you're not already homeschooling, you'll be like,
wow, this is awesome.
And if you are homeschooling, let me encourage you that it is a really wonderful pathway to take with your children. My first reason to homeschool is that children get to spend more time on hobbies. Now, this seems like a small point initially, but children love doing their hobbies. It's a really fun thing. And so a child all of a sudden develops a real interest for learning, and that can help them in all these other subjects because all of a sudden they're interested in what they're doing, and that excitement carries to other parts of their life. Instead of just having a monotonous, let's go to school and learn a whole lot of subjects, only some of which perhaps I enjoy. When I was homeschooled, I spent hours doing hobbies. I made this incredible, I'll try and find some B-roll of it. I made this incredible little miniature house copy of the room I was in at the home. I would paint, I would often win art contests. The point is that homeschool kids can get up to so many hobbies, which is so much fun, and things they'll remember for life. Now, you can do this if you go to school, but you just don't have the time, so much time when you're homeschooled, and that's the difference really. Something else you can only do if you homeschool is to spend loads of time on a sport. Now, kids who are in school can spend time in sport, but they can't spend, again, that huge block of time that you'll have if you homeschool to become an elite athlete. I have a cousin, he was very good at soccer, and he went to England to play in the big leagues there. He said it was just too hard, so he started homeschooling himself, and he really enjoyed that. He said it let him have so much more time to spend on the sport that he loved. We too, my family, we became quite involved in elite level of cycling when I was young. And this was only possible because we were at home when my father was home, so he was able to take us out for lots of rides. So these are the sorts of things you can do. You can get involved in elite things that take big chunks of time that your child might not be able to do if they were in school. Something else that really takes off if you're homeschooling your child is entrepreneurship. That is, your child can start their own business at home by themselves. And you hear a lot of children who just drop out of their high school years to become entrepreneurs, and they start homeschooling instead. Now, homeschoolers have a wonderful opportunity, especially if you as a parent just push them a little bit and say, hey, how could you make money yourself? Let's not so much rely on pocket money, but what sort of business could you do that could help you earn money? With my son at the moment, he is now 6 years old. We have done this whole, I'll link it below, but we did this whole succulent selling business, and he earned a fair bit of money from that. And he was just so excited that he could earn the money himself. And he really got the idea that you work for your money. And the wonderful thing about homeschooling is a child can live at home rent-free. They can make all the mistakes that is really a big disaster if you're an adult and you're having to rent out premises, or you're staying at home and you really need to have an income coming in. That's usually a disaster, but for a kid at home who's tinkering around in the backyard or in their room, it's no big deal. So trial and error, the time to do that is when your child is at home. As a parent, you can really encourage this by saying, hey, why don't you read a book on business? Or hey, why don't we look at this video on how to do a little business? And they might not be into this, but hey, just give them a little push in that direction and see if it's something for them. And this is how so many amazing entrepreneurs, people like Tim Tebow, so many other people have started their cool business, and there's so many unknown homeschoolers out there. All this talk about business is making me feel like I need a coffee to do some more business things, so I'll go do that while you subscribe and like. Okay, now while I'm making my coffee, let me tell you about the Homeschool Parenting Program. So this is an online course for homeschoolers new to the scene. The Homeschool Parenting Program is a program for new homeschool parents, and it will teach you all of the things you need to be avoiding when you start homeschooling. I have been teaching homeschool parents about homeschooling for a long time, and I've seen them make mistake after mistake that it's just so avoidable. And so if you're new to homeschooling, I'd really encourage you to check out the Homeschool Parenting Program and don't make the mistakes that so many homeschool parents do make. It will help you avoid homeschool burnout, something I've seen so often, and help you become confident on your homeschool journey. Another thing you can only do if you homeschool your children is to have more chats with your children. As the children get to have more chats with mum and dad about sex, politics, theology, all these things you think to yourself, when my child goes to school, they don't talk about a lot of that because they're kind of those subjects that, well, you talk to your parents about them and not your school teacher about sex, don't you? Well, sometimes schools do it, but you think to yourself, should they be doing it or should I be doing this? When I was homeschooled, my dad was wonderful. He would often do night shift and then he would wake up around 11 o'clock and then we would just chat for hours, talk about theology, talk about Jesus so much, talk about the importance of the Bible. And this was a way that God really blessed me, was through my parents being able to have these really long chats. And so mum and dad, if you're listening, thank you so much for all of that time you put into us. Something that was not possible when we went to school in our earlier years, but it was definitely possible when you homeschooled us. So thanks, mum and dad. Another thing I could only do at home, or at least only do a lot of it at home, was something again that my parents made very possible, was learning practical skills. A lot of those life skills. When you went to school, you weren't able to help your dad with the shed half the day. A lot of the time when we finished our homeschooling work, we went outside and we would help our dad with some nailing, or we would bag and paint a house, or we would paint a room, or we would sand this or that, or we would make a woodworking project. Because again, we had oodles of time that we didn't have when we were going to school. You'll learn a little bit of this stuff if you go to school, but you'll learn a lot of it if you homeschool. Time can be used so much more efficiently when you homeschool. I learned to become a great cook, often cooking with my mum in the kitchen. My dad was a chef, so he used to really enjoy teaching us the skills he had learned. But honestly, especially when I was older, I would just sit down with a cookbook and learn how to cook out of the cookbook with all the mountains of time that I had. And then when I was older, I had lots of time. Dad used to say I used to love all the cakes you used to bake, Beck, because I was really into baking. A lot of teenage girls are, and the whole family used to enjoy the things that I made. Also cleaning. I feel like cleaning has become this lost art. So many children just don't know how to clean a house these days. They don't know what products to use, what products not to use. If you can just use water a lot of the time, what's the best scrubbing technique, all these different things in cleaning to know. And you have time when you're at home to do that and learn those sorts of skills. And then sewing. As a teenage girl, I really got into this and spent lots of time learning to sew buttons on shirts, but also learning how to make my own bags. My brother now, who is homeschooled, he loved this sort of stuff. He now makes his own leather shoes and they look as good as the shops. These things are amazing. Another thing that gets taught on steroids is character training at home. Now you get a little bit of this if you send your children to Christian schools. They have a little bit of a focus on teaching character, and that is fantastic. But you as parents get to really invest in your child and be alongside them all the time, teaching them good character, giving them scripts of what they've said, what to replace it with. Goodness me, don't tell that person they're fat, that's rude. Don't say anything. Teach them what to say instead. And children, they're just so honest, and then sometimes they're actually mean and rude.
I think you're mean.
And you need to actually get behind that and say, what is a Christ-like, what is a loving way you can interact with that person to make them feel good or to encourage them to do something or whatever it is. You can teach your child how to love other people better than what I often see in schools. And sadly, in my own Christian school, I went to school for a few years. It was considered a wonderful Christian school, but I didn't get much character training. I certainly don't remember any character training. In fact, I went the other way, and perhaps I was not listening, but when I was at home and when I was homeschooling with my parents, I did listen to them and I learned so much character from them. So I'm very thankful. Another thing that will really resound, especially with a lot of boys, but also girls, is that when you homeschool, you get so much more nature than when you are at school. That is right. You can go out for days at a time. I've heard of parents who they do their academics in the morning and then they send their children outside for the whole day. And then when children are older, they can go on camping trips by themselves or they can camp in the backyard. And then there is nature study and there's field trips and there's all these wonderful things you can do out in nature. Get to know those trees. Nobody else knows the names of these trees around us and these shrubs and which food can you eat, which foods will kill you. You can learn these if you homeschool, and you can learn that on steroids. And I find so many homeschoolers I know have a really great knowledge of plant life. They have a really wonderful knowledge of looking after animals and taking care of guinea pigs and dogs and rabbits and whatever it is. They've been able to have that training. And sometimes you get a little bit of that in school, but again, in homeschooling, you get that on steroids.
I'm invincible!
One of my favorite things about homeschooling was we had these guinea pigs and these rabbits. And I remember one time my guinea pig had little baby guinea pigs and I was over the moon, little 7-year-old me. And it was just such a beautiful experience. I think a big frustration with homeschool parents sometimes is that they just don't have enough time in the day to do a lot of these hobbies alongside their children. They find that so many things take so long. And so you really need to know how to save time in your day so you're able to do these things alongside your children. And I've got a video for that. Ways you can save time in your homeschool. So go check it out.